Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome to another video for Infinite Lagrange. In today's video we're doing another blueprint breakdown, the series where I take a look at a particular ship and all of its different variations to talk to you about how I think that ship best works. And in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Jupiter Industries Callisto, one of my favourite cruisers, though that should come as a surprise to pretty much no one considering that Jupiter Industries are by far my favourite of the three main producers in Infinite Lagrange, although three, that's now going to be changing now. We've got Hyridin and all that coming back into the fray as well. Anyway, if you do enjoy this video, please take a brief moment just to hit like on it now, and then if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel, you can support me by heading across to patreon.com/Captain Benzie. Thank you very much. Every pledge really helps. That all said and done though, let's jump into the Jupiter Industries Callisto. Now, like most Jupiter Industries ships, the Callisto is named after something in our solar system, namely one of the moons of, and I'm going to really embarrass myself here if I get this wrong, I believe it's one of the Jovian moons, Callisto. I can never remember if it's Jupiter or Saturn. I'm 90% certain it is Jupiter. It's a really cool moon. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Obviously, if you're into modern gaming, you'll have heard of the Callisto Protocol, a game being made by the same people as the original Dead Space. I'll be honest, I'm not looking forward to it all that much. I thought I'd look forward to it more than I do, but the more I see, the more I'm... Anyway, we're not here to talk about the Callisto Protocol, we're here to talk about the Callisto cruiser. There are three variations for the cruiser. The first one you're going to come across is, of course, the Type A torpedo type, the Callisto Cluster Torpedo Raid Ship. And on its own, this is already a really powerful vessel. If we look at its firepower stats, 15,050 basic anti-ship, 1,400 anti-air is pathetic, and 3,883 on siege is not actually all that bad. For a ship that's not a dedicated siege vessel, that's pretty potent. And it does get an A rating for combat, C against anti-aircraft, and B for siege. It gets C on its survivability and strategic capability as well. It's a bit of a mixed bag, this one, but it is a very popular ship because of the sheer amount of damage that it can put out. So let's go first of all and have a look at its weaponry, the Eternal Polaris Large Projectile Launching System. Now, one of the great things about the Callisto as a cruiser is that it only has one main weapon. All of its firepower comes from this one weapon, which means you only need to upgrade one at a time, which is a good thing because each level of this requires 6 blueprints to even attempt. Getting this all the way to 30% is pretty tricky. You have to dedicate when it comes to cruisers which of these you want. With frigates and destroyers, I tend to have maxed out most of these. Here you can see I haven't even bothered particularly on this one. Callisto, we'll talk about why later, but getting that additional 30% damage, it's only on one weapon, which is a big benefit. Now, the damage type, of course, is projectile. Being a torpedo ship, it has critical capability, so it can deal additional damage to the target, and it does actually have anti-aircraft range, although it won't really use this all that much, if at all. It starts off shooting at the big stuff and works its way down to the smaller, with the exception of auxiliary ships randomly being at the bottom. Those are big ships, and the Callisto just doesn't care about them. It'll go for battleships, which aren't in the game, carriers, battle cruisers, then cruisers, before eventually, if there's none of those on the field at all, it might shoot at a corvette or a fighter if it's feeling particularly feisty. If we go into the enhancements as well, we do have heavy ammo. When the target is a cruiser, it increases damage by 60% and attack duration by 30%. So that is a massive boost to its overall damage per minute against cruisers. This means that when you first gain the capability of building cruisers, the Callisto is an excellent option. The Callisto A-type is an excellent option because of that sheer insane damage that it can put out against other cruisers. Of course, you can then increase that crit damage with some of the enhancements later on. We can look at missile and torpedo damage. We can look at the cooldown effects in that here as well. There are things like hit rate. We've got the usual sort of stuff, interception capabilities, weapon crit system damage, and interception again. Now, for me, if I'm building this early on, and I didn't on this server, I went for a different cruiser instead. I then swapped to the B-type in a moment, which we'll talk about in briefly. Ultimately, the A-type is excellent if you're going up against cruisers. Like, it is a beast against cruisers, at which point you have a look at things like large target correction to make sure it's hitting cruisers and higher. You can go for straight up damage, but definitely grab those crit damage boosts. That will make for some truly frightening damage here from the Callisto A-type. It's just the Callisto A-type, despite the fact that it can shoot at higher power vessels, the B-type will do that better. We'll talk about that in a moment. But ultimately, early on, this is a brutal ship to wreck opposing cruiser fleets. If we have a look at the propulsion system, despite being a Jupiter Industries, it doesn't have any of those nice little bonuses to your evasion. You are stuck with just the basic stuff there. The armor system, there's not much going on here either. Standard ship HP, physical resistance, does have the nice reduced crit damage, but again, you're kind of going to want to make this glass cannon, get this to punch things in the face as hard as possible, worry about tanking and survivability later on. If things are dead, then they don't really, you don't have to worry about them firing back, right? Now, the second type then is the anti-ship type, the heavy torpedo raid ship. And if you thought that the standard A-type Callisto was fun, the B-type becomes an absolute monster. If we look at the basic stats here, this starts off at 20,250. I've then enhanced this one up further. You can see I've got 3 of these running in fleets currently. We're here mid-server, and I've got its S rating on anti-ship capability. It is an absolute beast. Now again, it's only one weapon type here. It's only got crit this time. It doesn't have that ability for anti-air, not that it matters. It's got that same attack priority other than the anti-air possibilities there that we saw before. It doesn't have anything overly flashy in regards to cruisers anymore. Instead, it is now battle cruisers. When the enemy fleet includes battle cruisers, it prioritizes attacks on these targets and just increases damage by 25%. 25% more damage against battle cruisers. That means that 20,000 starting is already at 25,000 before you've looked at other upgrades. Just what? Then, of course, we've got our usual torpedo damage upgrades, weapon crit damage upgrades there. I always go for these as early on as possible. They are so useful and so powerful. Then you go for those hit rate against cruisers and higher ships. Really, really nice just to make sure you've got some stuff going on here. It is worth noting as well, we do have siege damage here as well. Whilst I'm not sure I would ever waste an enhancement slot on this naturally, if I'm throwing a siege fleet and, things are going my way, well, who knows? Maybe I would just quickly do a respec and pop on the extra siege damage. 30% additional siege damage is quite nice on top of what is already a solid 3,665 damage to start with. Again, like before, you do require 6 blueprints every time you want to attempt an upgrade. I'm going to try it here, watch it fail spectacularly with those. Yep, there we are. It's difficult to upgrade these with 6 blueprints being consumed every time, but hey, just the damage that this puts out is truly monstrous. If we have a look at the propulsion system, same story as before, nothing at all exciting going on there. When it comes to the armor system, same thing, it's just your basic upgrades. Again, that nice crit damage reduction, but that's pretty much all that's got going on here with the Callisto. This is just a beastly ship going up against battle cruisers and larger, and that's ultimately why I haven't built any of the early ones. I didn't put any tech points into the A-type on this server because I'd invested in a different cruiser when I first got them. Now that I'm going up against battle cruisers, I'm starting to build the heavy torpedo raid ships, and I am cackling at the amount of damage these things can do. It is just truly monstrous, and I strongly recommend these if you are able to get one. It's so much fun. Finally then, we have the C-type, the heavy UAV cruiser, or the support type. Now this is a bit of an unusual one. If we read through this here, an upgraded version based on the prototype. 50% of its torpedoes are removed to make space for a UAV hangar. Doing so grants the ship the area denial anti-aircraft capability and improves the entire fleet's combat capability. This makes it fairly similar to things like the Series or the Tundra, and it's honestly a bit of a mixed bag. So let's have a look at that anti-aircraft UAV pod. Ultimately, it carries area denial anti-aircraft UAVs, which are really hit and miss in Infinite Lagrange at the moment. They still seem to be bugged, they don't always work and stop incoming aircraft, which makes them hard to recommend in general. But also, even if you were going to do this, I don't know why you would just go for something that's carrying 2 anti-aircraft UAVs at a full 20 command points, when you could just go for a Tundra that does the same for 9 command points. Or heck, just use literally any other ship out there. The Xena Stinger has an anti-aircraft UAV one that actually works. You've got things like the Mare Serenitatis, the Mare Nubium. And indeed the Mare, the other one, the third one, the long thin one that starts off as a missile, that has loads of anti-air capability. I'm not sure why you would ever really bother building this, because 20 command points is a lot to give up. And okay, it's still got okay damage, but even compared to the A-type, 15,000 from the A-type, 11,000 for the C-type, and I just don't see that this is ever really worth it. If it's your only anti-aircraft, yeah, maybe if NetEase ever actually fix how anti-air UAVs work, yeah, we could go for it, but otherwise, it's just a worse version of the A-type currently. The A-type will actually do more anti-air with its weaponry than this seems to do using its UAVs. And that whole thing that it says here about improves the entire fleet's combat capability, not that I've seen. Like, if we were to have a look at the, like some of the other ships out there, like the Series C-type, the Tactical Series, that actually does buff up the rest of the fleet around you. This just doesn't. This just doesn't. It is just an A-type that gives up some of its torpedo, its anti-ship, to instead have some anti-air that actually doesn't always work. So I just prefer the A-type for that. If you need some anti-air on a cruiser, go for the A-type, or go for a better anti-air cruiser like the Light Cone or the Predator, or literally the KCCP V2 has its different types that will deal with things like this as well. I don't know. I just really don't think that the Callisto is at all worth it for that C-type. Anyway, folks, those are my thoughts and opinions on the Callisto. The heavy torpedo raid ship is probably one of the most powerful cruisers in the game right now. The torpedo type is an excellent alternative. The support type is a bit of a confusing mixed bag that just doesn't really do what you want it to do. And so for that reason, ignore the support type, build the A or B types. They're excellent. Anyway, folks, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Hope you find this useful, hope you're enjoying Infinite Lagrange, and thank you for watching right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in Infinite Lagrange!